The following program contains adult language, poor taste in jokes, racial slurs, political slurs, slants, and all sorts of things that, if you are sensitive and have a delicate constitution, you should probably go watch Teletubbies. You were warned.
Hey kids, welcome back to Roto Talk.
Alright, here we are. So, again, still on the cold Friday morning, afternoon, whatever this is. So, what we've got left to do, we're going to put trim tabs on. Now, a lot of times on the flat bottom cracker, I don't use trim tabs. I haven't had a ton of need for it. I don't know if it's the way I build the boats. I just don't usually have too much issue. Somebody once told me you need trim tabs when you don't build your boat right.
You seem to know your business. I want the best mine and I can pay for it.
But I don't necessarily believe that totally. On the V-bottom boats, V-bottom crackers, the V-box, I do use the use trim tabs always. So we're gonna go. This is all the hardware off the old Nintendo boat. None of these are new, but this is not. Okay, this is a medium right turn fin, right there. You should use a large. Okay, you got small, medium, and large. ZippKits has them all, and that's where I get these. But on this particular model, the medium seems to work okay. If you're building this strictly as a sport boat and you're not going to be racing, you may want to put one on the left too. Now you can see there's a chamfer right here, whatever you want to call it, and that chamfer goes the outside. All right, so this is a right turn fin. Okay, they come in pairs, so left and right. If this is going to be a sport boat and you want to be able to turn left a little bit better, put one on the left. I'm not going to, even though I don't race, and all my boats are sport boats. The only boats that I put dual turn fins on are monos. But aside from that, everything gets a single right-hand side. So, trim tabs. This is how these work. You have a bracket. This is the way it's going to go on the boat. You got a jam nut right here. All right. I do not like these button head Allens. They strip way too easy. I like the socket heads better. A lot of times I swap them out. And then when you screw your screw down, it pushes your trim tab down into the water, and it gives you that leverage of the boat. Okay? So we'll talk about those more. And then we have a right-hand rudder. Now, the rudder, if you're going to put it on the left side of the boat, would be over here on the bracket. Okay? You have a set screw that locks in this bar. Okay, I'm not going to take it apart because I always Loctite these, and it's just I'd have to heat it up. So this rod that goes through here has a flat spot in the middle. You slide that down, look at it through the hole, and then make sure that flat spot, maybe color it with some black Sharpie, make sure it's facing up, put your set screw in, use some blue Loctite. If that rod comes out, your rudder falls off. That's bad. That's a bad day at the zoo, right? This is where our 440 rod is going to go into. This is just a swivel mount. And when we do future builds, you'd be using brand new hardware. This is kind of a special case. This is a dual pickup rudder. So we've got an inlet here and an inlet here. I might sharpen this up a little bit before we slap it on there. And then those inlets come out here. Normally, you've got a shear pin screw here. This is a brass screw. So if you hit something, that brass screw will break like a shear pin in a prop on a real boat. It'll break, and this propeller will lever up. What that's for is so if you do hit something, it doesn't rip the transom off the back of your boat. If I break them, I have a bad habit of just putting a stainless one in there.
Blundering ass.
And I've even sheared those off. I've never ripped a transom off a boat, but you can. Just because you haven't done it doesn't mean you can't. So you should replace that with another brass screw. But I know my lake very well. So if I hit something that's going to hit my rudder, I probably already destroyed the boat. Because, yeah, you guys have seen my water. So And that is really about it. I am going to, you can see I have hit some stuff. And this leading edge, you can see it's tapered. Okay. I'm going to polish this up a little bit. I'm going to put a quick blade across there. I use like a 220 sanding disc on my drill press, and I just zip it under there to sharpen it up, and I'll wire wheel it first just to make it look a little bit better. Not that it's, it's strictly cosmetic. That's all that is. And then this is our exhaust port. This exhaust port here normally comes out like this long. All right, it's used for when your exhaust comes out the bottom of the boat, or the transom. This goes in the transom, and your pipe rides in there, the pipe tip. Okay, this is the nut. This comes off, and you basically drill a hole through your transom where your pipe's going to come out. And this is usually very long, because if you use this in a thunderboat or a hydroplane, your pipe might be back here, so you'll want to connect a silicone piece of rubber hose, heat-proof hose, that goes from the tip of your tuned pipe into here. But with a cracker, the tip will actually stick out. So that's why I chop this off. It's just less weight, less room, no big deal. So I'm going to go put an edge on this real quick. I'll be right back. All right, we're back, and I already got my greasy ass hands all over this. So basically I just took the bench grinder, wire wheeled the crap off, oxidation, just make it look a little bit better. I did not do the bracket because it's going to look like that in about the first 3 minutes we run it anyway. And then I used my sanding disc on my drill press, just put an edge on that blade. It's not a razor blade. I mean, it's sharp. You hit a Canadian goose fast enough, you cut its head off with that. Okay, but it takes any burr off, and it's not like boat prop sharp. So the next thing you want to do is there's instructions in the manual on how to do this from Joe. That's just how I do it. Okay, so you want this rudder to be totally 90 degrees to the running surface of the bottom of your boat. Okay. If it's not, if it's like that, it causes problems. That would be bad. Okay, you don't want to do that. The other thing I do is I put a feeler gauge in here, or I don't, but you can. I don't have it butted up totally against the strut. I have it offset just a teeny bit. That way, if I need to make an angle adjustment, I've got one. Okay, if you butt it all the way up against there, bad things are going to happen if you need to straighten it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our trusty digital protractor. I'm going to zero it out because the boat's not straight on the stand. Ooh, do we need to replace our battery? Okay, so I replaced the battery in this guy. It's still hard to see. That's okay. And it's zeroed out on the bottom of this. Now, since this is a flat bottom boat, it's got a tiny graduation there, but again, it's the riding surface. So I just zero it to there, and then I'm going to make sure the rudder is at 90. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to hold this here, basically. Now, if you want to, let's see if I have any blocks available. See that crap out there? Let's see. Yeah, there's one. See these steel blocks? These are handy to have. It's just a piece of steel. I set it right there, and then when I put my rudder up there, you can use a straight edge of any sort. It doesn't matter, okay? And then I'm going to put a drill bit right through that top left-hand hole. Or you can use a marker if you want to do it that way. It doesn't matter. Then I'm going to thread in a bolt, and then we'll line it up. We'll make sure that's nice and true, then we'll put in the other 3 bolts. Be right back. A couple schools of thought that say, do you make sure this is 90 or this is level or the rudder itself?
Think, you can do it, that's it.
Okay. Take it with a grain of salt. I mean, realistically, if this is a brand new setup, this should be in perfect alignment with this. Okay? So if you're level on the bottom of the boat, okay, you should be able to do this. It should be 180 out. Pretty darn close. Which means this should be 90, right? Let's see what we got. 89. Okay, so this alignment is fairly good. See, fairly conducive. So let's go. We're going to do it off of the rudder, so 180, and that should be about 90 point. Okay, we're going to go in a little bit. Always measure this. I'll take 90.3. That's good. So now we're going to drill in the rest of the drills now, or screws. So if this is a brand new setup, what I recommend you do is you can don't even put the rudder on the bracket, because this bracket's a separate piece, then this rudder bracket, and then the rudder. Don't even put this on yet. You can just make this 90, make it exactly the same as your riding surface, and you'll be fine, bolted up. But since I can't trust this because I have hit sticks or whatever, maybe my rudder's a touch off in this direction, in the, you know, rotate about X direction. So now I just hit it. I'm going to have to do it over. But so I don't necessarily trust that just having that bracket level is going to be great. Okay, I did lower mine a little bit. I did that on purpose just because of my radio box placement, but that's okay. But you can make these totally level on a cracker for the most part. All right, so I'm just going to make sure that this is a totally perpendicular 90 to that riding surface. And I'm going to go ahead and throw in the rest of the screws, and we'll be right back. All right, so we have all 4 screws in. We have our nuts and our washers and Loctite in there. I don't know if you can see that or not. Using our trusty dusty screw gun, and we're going to use there it is, a ratchet, just a socket, and I'm just going to put that back here, just like that. Now again, if you're using the stock hardware, it probably has lock nuts, and you won't have to use thread lock, but you still can if you want to. Actually, nah, it won't help you. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to drill a hole through here for our shaft, but we're not going to put the boot in yet. Okay, simply done. So let me grab my bit, be right back. Okay, so you don't have to use one of these if you don't want to. This one's a tapered step bit, but you can use a stepped step bit. The difference is this. Tapered, notice it's nice and smooth. Stepped. Some people like the stepped better. Whatever you want to do, it doesn't matter. So I don't get real anal about this. I just then I do a little bit from this side. Okay. So what that hole is for, and we'll clean that up when we go to paint it. You can see it. My step bit's a little bit abused, so I need to sand that down a little bit. Obviously, that's for the rod coming out of the rudder. Okay, for the rudder, for the servo. You can put, and I will be putting a boot on there, which is like a bellows boot. Hang on, I'll show you. I knew I bought some of these off Joey the other day. Okay, so that's these. I use these for radio boxes. Now, so this, I put a little bit of grease in here. Okay, the grease does 2 things. Helps the rod go through without binding this real bad. And it also keeps it lubricated, because these things will dry rot. And if you squirt a little WD-40 in there, grease is actually better. I actually take Vaseline or grease, put it on a Q-tip, stick it in there before I install it, and just kind of do that. And then we shove it through there, pull it through with some tweezers or whatever you want to use. Depending on the size of the hole you do, you don't even have to glue them necessarily. You usually do. Now, if you're building a boat, and that's to keep water out. That's all that's for. But if you're building a boat that has no clutch, and we're not covering clutches in this build, but the boat's always in motion. Okay, now that's not saying it's not going to stall, or you're going to run out of gas, or flip, or whatever. This is an open cockpit boat. You don't need to put that boot in. You want to seal all these holes. When you seal it, we're going to seal the outside, obviously, whatever. But realistically, it's an open cockpit, so what are you really keeping water out of? Right? So, you have to use the boot. I do use the boots on the radio boxes, obviously. So now we've got a nice hole for that. So now the next thing we got to do, it's important to put the rudder on first. Hang on. Apologies, smoking hot wife interruption. So what I was getting ready to say was you want to put your rudder on, well, your rudder on after the strut, obviously, but your rudder goes on before anything else. A reason being, if you're going to use trim tabs, you need to know how far that rudder is going to swing. That's a bad day at the zoo, right? I mean, obviously, it's only going to swing to there. That's going to be full tilt, give or take. It's not ever going to go like that. But in case you ever do need to move it like that far out to get to your bolts or whatever, that's basically where I put these. Now, there is an exact measurement. I mean, you can measure like from here to here. You can, whatever you want. It's just how I do it, not necessarily. It's always worked well for me. And so then what I do, so we take this apart and we take off the pressure section. This part pushes down, okay? And we just keep the blades. All right. Now on a normal hull, you want to keep these a couple mil, usually is a safe bet, 2 or 3 mil, above the very bottom of the boat. Because if you put it all the way to the bottom of the boat, you'll never be able to relieve the trim tab pressure. Does that make sense? So if you have the trim tabs at 0, it's still applying because the boat's going to plane up and you're going to hit the water with your tabs. The tabs are to level your nose out. Tabs do kind of 2 things. If your nose is coming up, it will help push your nose down, but it also lifts the ass end up a little bit because these are pushing down against the water, right? So with this, what I do with my crackers is I leave this edge on the back. All right, I'm going to clean this up before we paint it. I have not sanded the seam yet. And I literally, with a cracker, I will usually just rest it right on that ledge and pin them down. Now, I don't have to be this far out because, again, we have to remember we have a turn fin going here too. Now, it shouldn't interfere with the turn fin too bad, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to pretty much the full extreme of what that rudder would be. Okay, that rudder's not going to turn more than that. Never going to happen. We're not going to need it to. Okay, which, if you look closely, is just about in line with the rudder bracket straight down. It's not critical. Some people will say it is, of course. It's really not. All right, not that critical. So I'm going to basically line it up just a little bit past where that rudder's going. And I'm going to lay it right on that edge. If you don't have that edge on your boat, make sure it's 2 or 3 mil above the water line or above the bottom of the boat. Okay? That should be fine. Sometimes I like a little extra rake. I'm going to move mine out a little bit. And I'm going to drill the hole. So we're going to mark it. Pretty much these holes on these particular guys are slotted. So it can go up and down. So I basically marked it right in the middle of those slots. And we're going to drill our pilot holes. Again, let the drill do the work. Because you don't want to get the wood breaking in the back. And that's basically it. So now what I'm going to do, you can see slotted holes, non-slotted holes. Okay, so these the bottom plates can ride up and down, so you can adjust it even further up. So this is basically going to go here, but I will be able to raise that even higher off than that other edge. So then what we're going to do, let me grab my calipers. Be right back. Don't have to have calipers. You can use a tape measure. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, at this point, you can throw a couple screws in that if you really want to, but I am going to hold one in. Put one in, I should say. Just to hold it. Okay, now, something I forgot to mention in the other video. I always under drill the holes for the hardware, just a tiny bit. Okay, just enough. I want just enough of a hole where I can get it started, but you can hear it kind of struggling. The reason I do that is 2 reasons. Well, really, it's just one. When you put the screw in there, even though we're going to take all this hardware off and we're going to reseal the boat, or we're going to seal the boat on the outside, those inner screws are going to be sealed. But it actually threads the wood a little bit. Yeah, it gives you a little bit more strength, but nothing worth talking about. But what it does is it really makes a nice tight seal. If you have too big of a hole, water could creep in. But again, it's an open deck boat. It's not a big deal. So what I'm going to do, I use my calipers, and I put it on the edge, and I measure in, and I lock it. So in that case, we're at 35, 36, 37 and a half millimeters. I do everything in mil. You can use a tape measure. It's not a big deal. And then we're going to measure over here, and that's to the outer edge of this. I'm going to go over here, which I don't know if you can see or not. And I'm going to mark that right there. So now, this other one, the edge of the deck plates there, are going to go right to there. They'll be nice and evenly spaced. The nice thing about having it evenly spaced on trim tabs is you'll be able to adjust them both fairly identical, but usually you do have one down more than the other. Usually it's the right hand side will be down a little bit more than the left if you're using these. So not a big deal. So we're going to take the hardware off this guy. We're going to slap this one on. I'm just going to hold it. Hopefully you guys can see this. I'll move it over a little bit. I'm just going to hold it there, take the drill, and aim for the center of that slotted hole again. We'll use it. A little easier than manhandling that drill. Don't be afraid to, God gave you a neck.
I'll hang him.
Bend over and look down. All right, let's drill these holes. So now, since we have the original hardware for these, because these are brand new, these were not on the old Cracker. I'm just going to use the hardware that came with them. So we've got our 2 bolts. I'm going to slide through here. This is the top, okay, just like that. And then we're going to take our handy dandy little useless screwdriver. These things are great. Okay, and that's basically it. We're going to tighten this up, and we're going to do this side as well, because I want all the hardware on. I'm going to make sure everything's nice and copacetic, everything fits. Push it all the way down. Now, on this one, I'm not going to put the nuts on the back, because I have to take all this hardware off anyway. This is just to show you guys. I did not put this on. We'll pretend I did. Okay. Because those trim tabs are coming. Everything's coming off the boat, right? All right. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to put on our turn fin. Okay. Same principle. Now with the turn fin, it's got some thread lock on it, so there we go. You can see with the turn fin, it's got this convex washer thing. It's just for looks more than anything. And we can adjust the angle this way. All right. So what you want is you want this edge completely 90 degrees to the bottom of the boat. Does that make sense? So I'm going to pull off this trim tab just to make life a little easier. Okay. You may have to, now these are the ones I get off ZippKits, but they're all pretty much the same. You may have to back this screw out a little bit to get this screw in. See how that kind of goes, blocks its way? I'm going to take this all the way out. I don't need it, because I know that's going to be a perfect 90-degree joint. So I'm just going to make sure this is 90 degrees to the surface of my boat, and I'll be fine. All right. So if you just want to thread it in there for looks, what I do with these is I want this blade as far out as I can towards the starboard side, the right-hand side of the boat. All right. The blade is far out to the right and pretty much as far down as you want to go. The lower you go, the more drag you're going to have, but the more catch you're going to have. You can get it to the point where if you only have that much of the turn fin in the water, and then for some reason you end up having to put your trim tabs down, it could kick the bottom of your boat up, and now you have less of this in the water. And if you're really bouncing or flying, if you're in a race, you hit tiny waves, your ass end comes out of the water, and you go to turn, now she's going to be like a dirt car. She's just going to slide across, because you're not going to have this in, and you're not going to turn, and you could crash or whatever else. So I kind of make mine deeper. Worst case scenario, you can always kick it back a little bit to raise it out of the water, but you probably won't have to. This is a medium anyway. The larges are much, much bigger. I could show you, hang on. Here's one on a mono. This is a large, I believe. Yeah, see the difference? Now this is left-hand side. Oh, yeah. It's not as wide either, okay? If you're buying hardware for this boat, use a large. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it right about there. You don't want it all the way to the edge, because you won't be able to get your nut on from the back. So, give yourself a little bit of room out here, right? Sorry, backwards. And I'm going to bring it down about like there, and I'm going to put it in. That'll give me enough bite. All right, it's about halfway point. Again, not super critical. Better too low than too high, though, because if it's too low, like I said, you could always raise this up if you needed to, which you usually don't. Usually have them straight down. But worst case, you could. But if it's too high, ain't nothing you can do. Sad. All right, so I don't even have to have the fin on for this bit. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark where I want this. And then I'm going to put a hole, or I'm sorry, a mark, yeah, but I'm going to put a hole right in that first one. All right? So I'm going to drill through that. Easy enough. Take a bolt, and I'm going to put that on the farthest outside edge, because we're going to use it as a hinge. Oops. Okay. See how I did that? Now you can angle it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our handy dandy level. I'm telling you, for 20 bucks or 15 bucks, these things are worth their weight in gold. So I'm going to level it to the outer edge. I'm going to zero it. Okay. Then this you want to be exactly 90. That's about as exactly as you can get. Okay. You want that exactly 90. If it's at an angle, bad things are going to happen. Okay. You don't want to do that. So that is perfect. I'm just going to drill a nice hole there. Done. Slap in the other screw. Again, not going to bother with the nuts on the back, because I just got to take all this off after the video anyhow. But we'll put it on for posterity's sakes. Try to knock all sorts of shit off here. Okay, and that is exactly how we want it. See that? Perfect. Now again, that's even fairly high. I could have gone lower with that, but I know it'll be fine. I've done enough of these. And you can see I have plenty of room to put the nut on inside there. If you go all the way to the edge, and that's one of the, there's my air compressor. That's one of the hard things about these certain boats. This has a nice wide stern in the back. Transom, you've got a ton of room, but you get into monos or something, or hydros especially, you're putting a lot of crap on the back of that thing with not a lot of room. It gets to be difficult. Okay, so hang on. Right, so this next bit is 100% optional as well. These are bulkheads. These are bulkhead fittings. So what this does is, this is like if you want to get a piece of water line, fuel line, whatever, through a wall, this is what you use. Okay, it's just a tube. You drill a hole, goes through there, through the deck, or wherever your bulkhead. Put your nut on the back. Boom. There you go. The nice thing about these, nice and neat. The bad thing about these, you have to have 2 pieces of tubing. You have to cut your tubing. No shit. No big deal. So, well, these are off the old boat, so I'm going to use them. You don't have to do this. In some boats, I'll just drill a hole that's a teeny bit smaller than the tubing. I'll drill 2 holes right here and just pull the tubing through. Honestly. As long as it's a little bit smaller, water won't get in, because silicone tubing, smaller hole, OD, the outer diameter is a little bit smaller than the tubing. It'll make a nice seal. But since I already have these, yeah, when in Rome, right? So we'll go ahead and do this. And what did I do? See, this is my problem.
Your wits are even duller than usual.
I always lose shit. That's fine. Let me grab a drill bit. Be right. All right. So, however you want to put these in, where you want to put these in is up to you. I like it to be a little different sometimes. I think it's kind of cool. You know, we could have, I'm going to have my outlets here and here, the water coming out, which is good and bad. One, it's good because you can see the water wherever the boat's at. You can see that your cooling is coming out. Whereas a lot of times you put them on the port side, the left-hand side of the boat, down in the middle, and it's harder to see the water, making sure your water cooling's coming out. So on my crackers, I always put, not always, but usually put the exhausts for the waters right here. But your inlets, you could put them right here. You could put them right here, which would look kind of cool. You'd have like, it'd give it that, you know, Star Trek looking shit, you know, where it goes in there. You can put them right behind the strut if you really wanted to. Doesn't really matter, however you want to do this. I don't recommend putting them through the hatch, like I said earlier, because when you put them through the hatch, you can't take the hatch off. That's a problem. Or you could just make them nice and neat and stick them right through here, if that's how you want to do it. It really doesn't matter, wherever you want. I think, just for fun, I'm going to put mine right here. And right here. Now, you can measure this, obviously, to make sure it's... Don't ignore that line. You're not going to see that line.
Oh, don't let that frighten you.
Alright. So, I made that way too small. That's alright. Using a tapered bit. Okay. Perfect. Could probably be a little bit bigger on that one. That's a bad thing about using a tapered bit. Okay, now here's another trick I do. This one's kind of fun. Again, just like your hardware, you want it to be tight, okay? And that's that's gonna be really hard to do by hand. Here's a trick. Put it in your drill. Gently. These are very thin-walled aluminum. Don't torque it. And then we're just gonna just like that. We're gonna do the same thing this side. And then you would put the nuts on. I'm going to put them on here just so I don't lose them, because I am famous for that. Okay. All right. So those are going to be our inlets. Okay. So I'm going to have a tube going from here to here, here to here. Now, just to give you, I don't know, a working example, these aren't necessarily the right length. These are just laying around off the old boat. There's an example. And obviously this one's going to be way too long, but you get the gist. It's going to be like that. It's different. I've never put them there before. Why not? It's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to be like, oh, it's going to take more pressure to get the water in. That's not true, because you'd be putting them right here. It's going to be, trust me, these rudders, when these boats are moving, kick up more water pressure getting that thing around. You know what to do with. So then the next thing we're going to do is put in our exhausts. Now, this is for water out. These are a little bit mangled from the past, okay? Notice there's a flat spot. Certain ones of these have flat spots. Certain ones of them have no flat spot, but there's actually a hex-shaped hole, and you can stick an Allen wrench in there. That's pretty cool to do, too. So we're going to do this. Like I said, I'm going to put right here. Faster. Okay. Perfect. All right. Now you can measure that and do a quadrant on it. Now, that's a little risky doing it that way for the reason of I still have to run my pipe, but I know my pipe's going to come right through here. That's going to be easy. Okay. So these you're just going to thread down, and usually there's a nut that goes on the back of those too. That's pretty common sense. So these two, you're going to put a tube here going in. 2 tubes coming out of the bottom. These are the inputs. You're going to have one going to here for your head, and one going to here for your header. Then an output is going to come to here, and an output going to come to here. Very simple. Okay? Nothing but a peanut. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to align our pipe. So basically, hang on. Here's me pipe. Okay? We're going to slide it through here. Stick it on right about there. Now, I'm going to angle this a little bit, and I'm going to throw that bolt in there. Okay. Just to hold it. This isn't any... So if you can't see this, don't worry about it. It's just helping me out a little bit. Just a couple thread lengths. Then, that's where I want to put my pipe. The thing to remember with your pipes is this is going to be under a hatch. So you have to be below this hole, and you don't want to be against that. All right. This is the, what is that, 1.5 inch angle header, because you've got your header bracket, your actual header, and your pipe that slides onto it. We'll do a video on pipes today or tomorrow, maybe. So this one comes out a bit. You don't want a tight one like a hydroplane. I'll show you what I'm talking about. If you look at this hydro, you see this angle here, and this bend is much shorter, like almost instantly comes out and around. Okay? It doesn't like come out and around. All right? Whereas this one with the cracker, it does. I want to say it's 1.5 inches, 2 inch. I can't freaking remember. It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. But if you had this too close, it would be like right here, and you might be able to get away with it. No, you wouldn't, because it'll hit your radio box. Remember, there's a radio box that's going to go here. So that's what we want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my Sharpie, and I'm going to, you don't want any angle on this pipe, not severe. Okay, so you want this to be, all right, looks like right about there. I'm just going to put a half moon. Whatever. Then we're going to take this out. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to drill a pilot hole. Now you can see this doesn't have to be perfect. There's the top of that little outlet, and the center is going to be right about there. So that's where I'm going to put my drill bit for my pilot. If you can drill it from the inside, we're going to see if that's... And the only reason you're doing it from the inside is just so you can see easier. We'll see if this fat old drill can fit in there. Yep. Okay. We're going to be making this hole fairly large. But now I know where to put my taper bit. Okay. So I'm not going to hold the camera and do this. I'll just show you when I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and throw this on real quick. Remember, this is the cover for our tip. I'll be right back. All right, so there we go. I put it in there. It's not tight. The nut's on the back. But our pipe now is going to fit We can just wing it right there. Of course it popped out. But you get the idea, kids. No sense in bolting all this stuff up. It'll be fine. The lack of that. Okay. Let's see. What else do we need to do? Couldn't figure it out. Next one is going to be the next video. We're going to do the radio box. I might do that tonight. We shall see what happens. So here's a preview. This is the radio box I use. I made this. I designed it, 3D printed it. Works really, really well. I prefer it to the wood ones. I prefer it to the plastic ones you buy. But I also designed this around my specs. And I'll go over this again in the radio box. But I use a specific servo that fits in these perfectly. This is the top. So it clamps the servos in there. That's where your steering comes out, your switch, your throttle. I use a specific battery this is made for, and I'll go over all of this once we in the radio box section video. And it's one nice unit, and then it just sits right here. It's very, I mean, we attach it obviously. This is a drain. I actually put hatch tape over this, and then I'll go over that. But this is where your antenna comes out. Throttle is going to come out right there. We're going to have to modify the boat a little bit for that. And then that's it. Very, very, very low profile. Normal radio boxes come up like this high. They're much bigger, much beefier. I got this thing down as scrunchy as I could. And it works really, really, really well. So we'll do that in the next video. But that's basically it. So our water outputs, water inputs, rudder, strut, trim tab, turn fin, exhaust. That's it for hardware. Very simple. Then we put in our radio box, fuel lines, water lines. That's all super easy. Of course, we have to paint and seal and all that. We'll see. It's 40-mile-an-hour winds, 20 degrees, snow on the ground, so we ain't painting for a while. These water outlets I'll obviously screw in later with a flat-bladed screwdriver, like I said. If I have new ones, I'll put them in because these are kind of scarred up. But what I do, I'll wire wheel these down, I'll put them back in, and then I will paint. I fill these up with a plug, and when I paint the boat, I actually paint these as well. It just looks better. It blends right in with the boat, looks really good. Okay? So that's it for the basic hardware on the back. It's very, very simple. Nothing to get carried away about. Just use your head. The only gotchas you have to worry about are make sure this isn't so low that you can't get the nuts on the back. And it's darn close. Okay? And then make sure this isn't so far to the edge you can't get the nuts on the back. And make sure that your exhaust is not going to hit your trim tabs. Okay? Very easy. So, if you have any questions, let me know. I'll get this online, and then we'll start the radio box. Keep dry side up. Bye.